So today's Parsha is called Re'eh, all right, and that means behold or see. It's given kind of as a command, and this is what Moshe's telling them. You know, you need to pay attention. Remember, we talked last week about how careful study and implementation of the word is required for us. Okay? And that's what Moshe's telling them. He's saying, look, examine yourselves. This is what is required. And this is what's going to be required even after I go off the scene. Because he knew that it wasn't going to be too long before it was time for him to go to the top of Mount Pisgah, right? He knew that. And Yahweh told him, go ahead and lay your charge on Joshua. Get him ready. Because you fixing to come see me. You know what I mean? And so that's what he's telling him. He's like, behold, I'm about to show you something. Okay? And these people need to learn how to see in themselves where they're doing well and where they're not doing well. All right? So that's what he's talking about. He says, I'm we'll talk about it here in just a second, but he's letting them know that you got to be careful. We can't just take anything that we get off social media or whatever and just run with it. Because there's a lot of people out there that they come up with all kinds of stuff that that don't even have a scriptural basis to it. Yet they preach it as if it's the word of Yahweh, And so the thing is, we got to remember that when it comes to studying the word and when it comes to listening to what people are saying, okay, we have to examine it carefully, right? Is this going to bring me closer to him, or am I going off on some kind of tangent that really doesn't matter here nor there? Okay, because people will latch on to things in the word that, it's an issue where it's like, oh, well, you can't wear this color on this day because it's such a... Where did that even come from? I'm just throwing that out there as an example. This is the kind of stuff that people would rather accept as the gospel or as the word. How many times have we heard people attribute quotes from Shakespeare and from poetry and from statesmen and Ben Franklin and all, and say that that was something that came out of the Bible? We hear that a lot, haven't we? So that's what I'm saying. We've got to be careful. It's like in Fiddler, right? When he said, that's not in the good book. And Otavia said, well, it should be. See what I'm saying? That's the kind of stuff that we allow ourselves to get pulled into. And that's what Moshe is telling him. He's telling him, look, you got to listen, take this thing to heart, because I'm not going to be here to hold your hand. And I'm not going to be here to lead you and guide you. You know what I mean? You've had all this time to learn. And that's how it is with us. There comes a time, just like, our children, they grow up. And there comes a time when you can't treat them like a child anymore. You need to treat them like an adult, right? And as an adult, even though you want to shield them from things, you can't. They have to experience that. But you can give them good tools, right? To be able to deal with those things. So that's why Moshe keeps going back to these things and keeps telling them over and over and over again. All right? Remember, I told you back then, and I'm telling you now, and I told your fathers in those days, and they're not here anymore because of their disbelief, or their unbelief, shall we say. They're not here anymore because they didn't trust me. They didn't rely on me. They didn't love me. That's why he told them last week, this is not the same covenant I had with your fathers back in the day when they rebelled against me and they basically committed adultery against me, you know what I mean? They ran chasing after. And what Moshe's telling them in this Parsha is to hold on to these things and remember where he brought them from so that they don't go back to, because they're fixing to step into a land now that they've never known before, right? And you remember what else he told them last week when we were reading the Parsha? He told them, he said, when you get into that land and you've got houses that you didn't build and vineyards you didn't plant, and when you go chasing after other Elohim, not if, right? He said, but when you do this, right? And I turn my face from you, you're not going to be able to blame me because you're the ones who did it. All right? So, like I said, our Parsha today is called Reh, which means to behold or, to see, right? It's Devarim or Deuteronomy 11 and 26 through chapter 16, verse 17. All right. It sounds long, but there's like 3 of these chapters that are only like 12 verses long. So it's not long at all. Okay. And we're going to take whole chapters and have one explanation because they're very, very short. Okay. So, you may get out of here a little bit. I may be a little less long-winded. I may be medium-winded today. Kim told me, she said, I don't know. You come from a line of people that can take 1 or 2 verses and go 3-4 hours on it. And I was like, now hold on there. I come by it honestly. It's not my fault. But anyway, so like I said, we're going to go ahead and read that. Chris, if you would read at least 12 verses of the Torah Parsha so that no tribe gets left behind, please.
All right, Deuteronomy 11, starting in 26. Behold, I set before you this day a blessing and a curse. A blessing if you obey the commandments of Yahweh your Elohim, which I command you this day. And a curse if you will not obey the commandments of Yahweh your Elohim, but turn aside out of the way which I command you this day, to go after other Elohim which ye have known not. And it shall come to pass, when Yahweh the Elohim hath brought thee in unto the land whither thou goest to possess it, that thou shalt put the blessing upon Mount Gerizim and the curse upon Mount Ebal. Are they not on the other side of the Jordan, by the way where the sun goeth down in the land of the Canaanites, which dwell in the Champaign over against Gilgal, against the plains of Moreh? For you shall pass over the Jordan, to go in to possess the land which Yahweh your Elohim giveth you, and you shall possess it and dwell therein. And you shall observe to do all the statutes and judgments which I set before you this day. Moving on into 12. These are the statutes and judgments which you shall observe to do in the land, which Yahweh the Elohim of thy fathers giveth thee to possess it, all the days that you live upon the earth. You shall utterly destroy all the places wherein the nations which ye shall possess serve their Elohim, upon the high mountains and upon the hills and under every green tree. And you shall overthrow their altars and break their pillars and burn their groves with fire, and you shall hew down the graven images of their Elohim. And let's see. How many is that so far? 2, 3, 4.
So go through 4 and 5.
4 and 5, okay. You shall not do so unto Yahweh your Elohim, but come unto the place which Yahweh your Elohim shall choose out of all your tribes to put his name there, even unto his habitation shall ye seek, and thither thou shalt come.
Okay. Abba Yahweh, we love you and appreciate you, Father. And we thank you so much for waking us up today. Father, we thank you for our great message that we had last night. Father, we just ask that you allow us to have another good message today so that we could learn about you and your precious son, Yahushua. Father, we also ask that you would guide us and lead us and direct us in all things of you and your son, Yahushua. Father, that you would touch our hearts and our minds, that we would be able to ingest this word today, Father, that we would be able to get it down in our hearts so that it could take root downward, that it could bear fruit upward. Father, that it would be good fruit, not rotten fruit, but that it would be good fruit that we could give to somebody who's in need of that sustenance, that we would have bread for them, bread enough to spare for them, so that they would be able to learn and feed upon your word and upon your Ruach today. Abba, we ask this, that you would just continue to allow your Ruach to rest in this house today, that it would move upon each and every person under the sound of my voice, that they would be able to grow, that your word would become that it would become obvious to them. Help our understanding so that we can grasp it better, and that we can, that it would be like those plates, that it would be plain to us so that we could run to it and incorporate it, implement it into our lives. Abba, I ask that you touch my mouth and touch my mind, that I would be able to bring this word to your people today, Father, in a way that they could understand it. Father, all we want to do is make it to see you at the end of this thing, no more, no less. Abba, we love you. We appreciate you. We thank you most of all for the precious gift of your Son, Yahushua HaMoshiach, the Word made flesh. And we just invite you into this house today, Father. We give you all the praise and all the glory in Yahushua's name. Amen. All right, so like we were saying before, he wants us to pay attention to what we're doing. Okay? We can get away with being ignorant, but only for so long. You remember that? Earlier, way back in the scriptures, it talked about a sin of ignorance, right? And at the time, you were free from the guiltiness of that sin. But once you find out about it, now you're held accountable for it. You see? And there's a lot of people that think that they're going to just do what they want to do, and then they're going to plead ignorance on the day that they stand before him. And, they'll just walk right in. Well, the pastor told me this and this and this. Well, you had the book. Why didn't you look at it yourself? See what I'm saying? Why did you rely on him? Why didn't you read it yourself? Why didn't you study yourself? Why didn't you examine yourself? You see? That's why I asked Chris to play that song today, because it says, examine yourself. All right? When it all comes down to it, when we're standing in front of him, it's just going to be us and him. There won't be anything where I can say, well, I did what I saw so-and-so doing. That's not going to wash. All right? That is not going to get it. And here's the thing. We have spoken over and over and over and over and over again. And like I said, I wish everybody could get it. All right? But we're going to see something very important here. Chris, if you wouldn't mind, could you read 26 through 32 for me, please? I forgot my glasses. Brother Michael may have to borrow your glasses. No.
All right. Deuteronomy 11, 26 through 32. And behold, I set before you this day a blessing and a curse. A blessing if you obey the commandments of Yahweh your Elohim, which I command you this day. And a curse if you will not obey the commandments of Yahweh your Elohim, but turn aside out of the way which I command you this day, to go after other Elohim, which you have not known. And it shall come to pass, when Yahweh the Elohim hath brought thee in unto the land whither thou goest to possess it, that thou shalt put the blessing upon Mount Gerizim and the curse upon Mount Ebal. Are they not on the other side Jordan, by the way where the sun goeth down, in the land of the Canaanites, which dwell in the champaign over against Gilgal, against the plains of Moreh? For you shall pass over Jordan, and go and to possess the land which Yahweh your Elohim hath given you, and you shall possess it, and dwell therein. And you shall observe to do all the statutes and judgments which I set before you this day.
Okay, so he tells them, behold, this day I set before you what? A blessing and a curse. You see, everybody wants the blessings, but nobody pays any attention to the curse. Have you noticed that? Okay, they act like it doesn't exist. Oh, G-O-D is love. Oh, he's love. Yes, he is, but love's got two sides. If you're a parent, you know what I mean? You love your child, but one way that you show that you love them is by what? Disciplining them, correcting them when they do wrong. You see, that's another way that the Father shows his love too, isn't it? But he says, I set before you this day a blessing and a curse. So he puts both of those things before us every day. All right? But he says here, a blessing if you obey the commandments of Yahweh your Elohim, which I command you this day. So what is the word telling us? This is not, and this frustrates the tar out of me when I hear people say that we're going to do this the way that you asked us to. Yahweh don't ask you to do anything. He commands us to do it. And he said, I'm giving you a choice, right? If he asked us to do it, it would be more like he's just kind of sitting there, well, if you wouldn't mind, could you please? He ain't never done that. He doesn't have to do that. Does he have to ask us to do anything? No. He does not. He does it because he is sovereign. He is king. He doesn't ask anybody to do anything. He said, look, it's my way or the highway, right? You can either do it the way I say to do it, or you can get out. We've said it many times. That door swings both ways. And people are welcome to come on in here, right? They're welcome to visit. They're welcome to call this home if they want. But when you go to sowing discord and misinterpreting things and leading others to do the same thing, right? Or going against the core tenets of what the word says, guess what that means? You got to go. And we're not shy about that, are we? You got to go. Okay? Because if you can't deal with these little things, if you can't deal with the horsemen, with the footmen, how are you going to deal with the horses? All right? If the footmen weary you, how are you going to contend with the horsemen? You know what I'm saying? Them horses are a whole lot stronger than a man is. All right? So if we can't deal with the little things, how are we going to deal with the bigger things? Do you see? But it says here that he sets before us a blessing and a curse. And that we get the blessing if we do what? If we obey. Amen? So what does it mean to obey? To do what he says to do. That's pretty simple, isn't it? To do what he says to do. That is what obey means. But by the same token, if I don't do what he says, what's he say is waiting for me? There's a curse waiting for me, right? And that the word that's used there basically translates to the word affliction. All right? There's an affliction waiting for me. There's a whooping coming. Because I chose, y'all hear what I just said? Because I chose not to obey. He gave me, I'm standing here and I'm looking, and I got a blessing and I got a curse. Well, I got to decide which one of those hills I'm going to walk up, right? Does that make sense? I see two footpaths here. And we know from verse 29 that the blessings were on Mount Gerizim. All right? The blessing was on Mount Gerizim, while the curse was on Mount Ebal. Okay? The thing is, we're standing here and we're looking at these mountains. And Gerizim, that means rocky, difficult, craggy. That's what that means, rough. The word Ebal means smooth. It can also be translated to bald. Like a person with no hair, their head is smooth, right? So it can be, so the thing is, do we look at this rough road here and say, boy, that's the one I want to go on? Or do we look at this easy way, this smooth way that doesn't have a lot of, do we look at that and we say, oh yeah, I'm going that way? We have to make a choice. What did he say in Matthew chapter 7? Right? That the way that leads to death is what? It's broad. It's easy. And a lot of people are going to go that way. Okay? Ask yourself this question. If you see something that's difficult and something that's easy, what are we normally going to do? We're going to do the easiest thing, right? And it's the same thing with all things in nature. All right? Air, water, even elemental things, right? They're going to seek what? The path of least resistance. Electricity is that way too. It'll jump a gap, right? It'll jump a gap to get to the least resistive location. So even the very elements follow that same principle. So when we're standing here and we're looking at this pathway, what's stopping so many people from walking this way? Oh, that's too hard. That's too difficult. I can't do that. My pastor told me I got grace and I can just do what I want to do because God knows my heart. You see the trap that people fall into? They see what's on Mount Ebal. They say, wow, because the church always told them, well, if you're doing right, you will never have no problem. Every day's going to be like Sunday. Every day's going to be cupcakes and rainbows, and it's all just going to be wonderful, and you're never going to have a problem. But that's not how the word is written, is it? Because in that same chapter of Matthew, he said, but the way that leads to eternal life is what? It's straight and narrow. And few there be that find it. Because that way is difficult. That's why the blessing was put on Mount Gerizim. And the curse was put on Mount Ebal. To get it into our heads. You know, we've always heard that if anything is worth having, it's worth fighting for. Right? For most of our married lives, Kim and I have fought for our marriage. Because in my mind, and I believe in her mind, it is worth having. See what I'm saying? We've had plenty of disagreements, haven't we? We've had plenty of knockdown, dragouts, and screaming matches and all that. We have, haven't we? But it's those things that have brought us closer. Because now we're on the same page, aren't we? Do you see what I'm saying? The way to eternal life is not easy. But everybody wants this greasy grace and just everything's so simple. Oh, it's just, if I accept him, if I go up there and shake the preacher's hand, well, I will never have a problem ever again in life. And then when something does happen, they've fallen apart. Instead of looking at it for what it is a test to see what you are going to do. Right? Are you going to take the easy way? Or are you going to take the difficult way? That's what stops people from walking this way. Because it's not easy. And that's what everybody wants. They want something quick and dirty, something simple, something easy that they can just do and not have. Hey, if I go to church on Wednesday night for an hour, and I go on Sunday morning for an hour, and I go on Sunday night for an hour, man, that's only 3 hours during the whole week. That's all I got to give him. And I've done my best because that's all I had to do. I just had to be there. But that's not what the word says, is it? This is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Sometimes 366. Do you see what I'm saying? We've got to do this thing according to the word. All right? But the thing that is important for us to remember is that ultimately, We make the decision. Yahweh just sets it out there and says, make a choice. We've talked about that before, right? What did he give us that's greater than anything in the, anything that he gave the animals? He gave us free will. And we have a choice to make every day. All right? So ultimately, where we end up is based on what? The choices we make. Y'all, I know I put this on us a lot. But that's because when it all comes down to it, nobody is leading me by the hand saying, go this way. I make the decisions for me. So if I'm going the wrong way, whose fault is it? My own. I'm not going to stand before Yahweh and be able to blame it on mom and dad. Well, they didn't teach me. You know what he's going to tell me? He's going to say, you a lie and the truth ain't in you. Because they taught you what was right. Yet you did what you wanted to do. And ultimately, the word says that a father can't take the penalty for a child, or vice versa, right? So is dad going to have to pay for what I did? No, I am. This is what I'm trying to tell everybody. This seems like simple stuff. But for some reason, it seems like a lot of people can't grasp it. You're not going to be able to blame your pastor when you get there and you hear, depart from me, I don't know you. Well, he told me, why didn't you had the book. Why didn't you get in it yourself? Right? Examine yourself. So what I want us to understand is that every day we are greeted with a set of choices. Soon as we get out of the bed, we're greeted with a set of choices. Do I walk this way up Gerizim, or do I walk this way up Ebal? Do I take the rocky road, the difficult road? Not the ice cream. Do I take the difficult way, or do I take the way that's easy? Dad said, like, it's just like a guy with in a gym. He goes to the gym, right? And he's just got the bar, and he's just lifting the bar. If he does that every day for 10 years, is he going to get any stronger? No. Because there's nothing there to challenge him. It's just like in school. If you go to school for 10 years, and you know the higher the degree you want, the more challenges there are in the way. Right? You go to school, you go to college, right? You go to junior college, you get your associates. You may transfer to a 4-year university to get your bachelor's, but then you've got your master's, and there's way more involved in getting a master's degree, and even more involved to get a doctorate. But the challenge is, if you go through all this, you write your thesis and do all this stuff, and it's accepted by peer review and all of these things, you get to do what? You get to attach doctor on your name. And that comes with a lot of prestige, doesn't it? Well, kind of the same thing for us. We do all of these things, and we follow the word. And we do what Yahweh says, and we're obedient. And we make difficult decisions. Right? And we continue to walk this way, even when we don't want to. Even when we say, it's too hard for me. We continue to do these things. When we stand before him, one day we're going to hear what? Well done. good and faithful servant. You were faithful over a few things. Now I make you ruler over what? Over many. And think about it too. When somebody says that they're a doctor, in your mind, it automatically kind of puts them into a higher bracket, doesn't it? Oh, maybe this guy knows what he's talking about. He's a doctor. It's like, I saw that thing. It was in a doctor's office. It was a sign on the wall that said, please do not confuse my years and years of medical training with your 5-minute Google search. You know what I'm saying? So this is the thing. We've got to make a choice. And that's what he's telling them. Every day you're going to have choices. And we know what their track record was, right? Their track record was horrible. And I can just imagine how Moshe felt, because he's like, man, I got to go. It's time for me to leave. And they're still a mess. But Yahweh did tell him to let them know that he was going to raise up a prophet from amongst their brethren, right? Like unto him. And that they needed to listen to him. Joshua was not him. Okay? But like I said, we've got to make good decisions. We have to choose wisely, not poorly. Okay? And the way that we choose wisely is by using the tools, looking for the patterns, looking for these things. This is what we do. When we look at something, or we hear somebody say something, right? Or we get in our mind, hey, I'm going to do such and such. First thing we should do is say, wait a minute. Do I see that pattern anywhere? Do I see that in the scriptures? Right? If I see that in the scriptures, then that's where I need to go to find out my answer, right? This is our light. What did Dawid say? He said that it was a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. It's going to show us the right way to go. But we have to be willing to make the right decisions. Okay? I go to work and I don't do the right thing, or I do what I want. That could have some catastrophic effects, couldn't it? What if I decided that just on my own one day, I decided that, this ingredient, let's just replace it with something else. That could be very detrimental, couldn't it? This stuff looks like the other one. Let's just use it. You remember a few years ago? That got a whole lot of infants hurt, didn't it? People were using melamine, right? Which is just plastic. In China, they were replacing a component of baby formula, making this bootleg baby formula with melamine, powdered plastic. You know why? Well, not only was it cheap, but when it was examined, if you examined it, it would give the appearance of a higher protein content. So that's what they were doing. Putting powdered plastic in it to make it look like something else, to benefit from it. That was a choice somebody had to make. Somebody had to say, hey, let's do this. So again, this is a very simple concept. The concept of right and wrong. The concept of clean and unclean. The concept of holy versus unholy. It's very, very simple. but it's something that we have to pay attention to every day. Because if we don't, before we know it, we're going to be off somewhere. Brother Michael, we've talked about it before. You got to cut a plank 25 feet long. I'm just throwing a number out there. But if you don't stay on that line and you get a 32nd of an inch off where you start at, where you going to be when you get done? You're going to be way off the mark, aren't you? Do you see what I'm saying? So we have to know, where are we starting from? Where are we where do we want to end up? Brother Michael, you want to end up on the end of that board on that same line, don't you? So you got to make sure. Well, they say measure twice, cut once, right? That's what I'm talking about. We've got to make good decisions based on what the pattern is. All right? So in chapter 12, he starts talking about these other Elohim, doesn't he? All right, Chris, would you read chapter 12, verses 1 through 3, please?
These are the statutes and judgments which ye shall observe to do in the land, which Yahweh Elohim of thy fathers giveth thee to possess it, all the days that ye live upon the earth. You shall utterly destroy all the places wherein the nations which ye shall possess serve their Elohim, upon the high mountains, and upon the hills, and on every single green tree. And you shall overthrow their altars, and break their pillars, and burn their groves with fire, and you shall hew down the graven images of their Elohim, and destroy the names of them out of that place.
Okay, so what is this telling me? This tells me that we are to utterly detest those things. Right? That means that I can't say, or I can't minimize Yahweh, right, by lumping him in as God. I don't know if y'all remember, but years and years ago, there was a discussion on TV with Oprah. And Oprah was speaking to a Muslim lady. And she used the term God, right? And the lady thought, oh, it's all the same. It's all the same. Everybody just calls it different names, but it's all the same. It's all the same. No, it isn't. He said, I will not share my glory with another. You see? There are so many. Let's just, for example, in the Hindu pantheon, there's 1.3 million Elohim. So are they all equal with each other? And they all have names, don't they? Every other belief system out there, the deity has a name. So how can we take Yahweh, who has a name, right, and lump him in with all the rest of this stuff? He said, I will not share my glory with another. And back in Exodus chapter 20, he said, I don't want to see any other Elohim before my face. That's what he's saying. I don't want to see them. I don't want nothing. All right? And there's a lot of churches out there that just lump everything together. Okay? I'm not going to talk about I'm talking about churches. Christianity that takes a lot of stuff from other systems and incorporates all that. We call that syncretism, right? And that is not what we are supposed to do. If it was, would he have told us, destroy those things? You know what it's for? Because we're sidetracked so easily. And he told them, when you go into the land and you begin to worship their Elohim, blah, 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 blah. He told them that, didn't he? When you do this. Because he knew. How fast did they go to getting a graven image when they were out there in the desert? Wasn't very long. Moses didn't even make an entire 40 days up on top of the mountain before they were, make us Elohim that can go before us. And when they drew on the design for their Elohim, what was it? It was a calf, which was worshipped as part of worship in Egypt. That was where they came from. That was what they knew, right? That's what they had seen. That's what they were exposed to. This is why we are not to have any part of that. What did we read last week? It said that do not bring an image or any of these detestable things into your house, lest you become something abominable like it. Okay? So that's why he told him, get rid of this stuff. Tear it down, knock it down, destroy it. Because as long as it's there, it's going to be a temptation for you. Because Israel's never met an Elohim it didn't like. They never met an idol it didn't like. Right? So, that's why he said to do this. So it doesn't get you off track. It doesn't get your eyes diverted from him. Or averted from him, shall we say. Kepha sank because what? He took his eyes off of Yahushua. It's the same thing with us. If I take my eyes off of Yahweh and I start to worship in Norse deities or Polynesian deities or whatever, is that helping me keep my eyes on Yahweh? Is that helping me to live by what the word says? No. That's why he said, be holy, like I'm holy. That's what he's telling them. I'm not like the rest of them. I'm separate. And we're supposed to be the same way. All right? So in verses 4 and 5, he tells us, he says, don't even what? Inquire after the way that they worship their Elohim. Why is that? It's very, very simple. All right? Because we're not to seek after their ways, but after his ways. Okay? We are not to worship as they do, right? But as he commands us. It's called a commandment for a reason. Okay? So, we talked about this, we said this before, and I don't know if it's changed any, but I've always heard that if there's something that goes on out in the world, was it within 5 years or 3 years? I think it's okay. Within 3 years, guess where you're going to find it? You're going to find it in the church house. Because they'll co-opt it, wash it up, clean it up, pretty it up, right? And then present it to their people with a new polished image on it, but it's the same thing. It's got the same root. I see a dandelion out there in my yard and I run over it with the lawnmower. I'm not going to expect in a month for a petunia to pop up there because the root is still the same. So if it's of the world, guess what? It's still going to be of the world in the church. All right? Do you remember when the prophet of Yahweh and the 450 prophets of Baal, y'all remember that whole situation? Y'all remember that? Had one prophet of Yahweh, 450 prophets of Baal over here, and he told them, he said, y'all go first. And they jumped up and down and they called out and they cut themselves and They danced around and they did all this stuff. Did it get them anywhere? No. The word says that Yahweh is an Elohim of order, not chaos. That was one of my biggest problems with growing up Pentecostal. Because what I was seeing, it didn't match with what the word said. All right? There was people jumping and flipping and flopping and laying out like cordwood and all this. You don't see that in the word. But that was the problem I had. I couldn't make it, just like Dad said before, I couldn't make it match up. I tried and tried and tried. I could never make it match up. All right? But how did the priests of Baal do? They cut themselves and bled and did all this stuff and did all these things. And when the man of Yahweh come up, what did he do? He just said a simple prayer and the fire fell, didn't it? That's how we know when the sacrifice is acceptable to Yahweh, right? The fire fell, licked up the sacrifice and the stones and the dirt and the water and everything. But did he have to do all that flipping and flopping and cutting himself? And the word said that they cut themselves with knives and lancets until the blood gushed out everywhere. He didn't have to do any of that, did he? That would not have been acceptable to Yahweh. Okay? So, using that pattern, I can see, like these people that, flagellants, there are groups of people that will strip down to just like a short garment, like some long-legged shorts or something like that. And they will crawl on their hands and knees over broken glass and gravel and all these things. And every step that they take, they'll whoop themselves. And these scourges that they use are like the ones they had in the scripture. Got pieces of metal and glass and I mean just blood flowing out everywhere. There are certain adherents to certain branches of Islam that will cut themselves. There are certain, I mean, it's all throughout, you know. Flagellants belong to a certain branch of Catholicism. Okay, but there are others. I'm just using these for an example. Okay? But Yahweh never once said, you need to cut yourself to make me accept your sacrifice. You need to hurt yourself to... He never said that.
He actually tells us that our blood makes us unclean.
That's why we can't be consuming any of it either. Okay? But the things that we do, to your point, the things that we do make us unclean. And if we think that we're going to impress Yahweh with our sacrifice, I cut myself, I bleed for him. Do you think that that's going to impress him? I tell you no. His son came and bled and died for us. Right? What we do, you know, our little gifts and stuff, it ain't nothing to him. But just like they cut themselves and did all this stuff, we're not to do any of that kind of stuff. That's what he told them. He said, you will not do so unto Yahweh your Elohim. That means don't worship me. Don't try to worship me the way that they worship their Elohim. That's what he told them, right? You be holy. You be separate. You be different because I'm different. Okay? So that's what we got to remember. We can't take something from another belief system, pretty it up, and make it acceptable to Yahweh. Even if we change the name, or even if we call it something different, we can't take that and make it acceptable to him, because the root is still there. All right. Chris, read verses 6 through 8, please.
Deuteronomy 12, 6 through 8 says, And thither you shall bring your burnt offerings, and your sacrifices, and your tithes, and your heave offerings of your hand, and your vows, and your freewill offerings, and the firstlings of your herds and of your flocks. And there you shall eat before Yahweh your Elohim, and you shall rejoice in all that you put your hand unto, you and your households, wherein Yahweh thy Elohim hath blessed thee. You shall not do after all the things that we do here this day, every man whatsoever is right in his own eyes.
Okay, so you see that? He said, Yahweh's going to put us in a place, going to put you in a place, right? And that's where you're going to bring your tithes and your offerings and your blessings and your flocks and your firstlings. And that's where you're going to bring them. Okay? And in that place is where you will consume them. Where the word tells us that yet we know that that Jerusalem is the city of his name. We know that. And one day we're going to go back to that place. But the scriptures also tell us that he prepared a place for her out where? In the wilderness. To keep her safe. All right? So the thing is, we are where we are right now. Are we out under every green tree and every bush and out in the field and all that are we doing that? No, we're here where? In his house, in a place where his name is taught. So ultimately, whatever house of worship you go to, ideally there's a name attached to it, right? But how many places have a title attached to them? Okay? If I go to if I go somewhere that's just using a catch-all or something like that, I'm not sure how much I'm going to receive there. Because they won't even accept his authority in the name. All right? Here's another thing. It says that we're supposed to bring these things. And how do we bring them? The word says, I will enter his gates, how? With thanksgiving in my heart. I'll enter his courts with praise. Well, you got to get through the gate before you can get into the courts. Amen? But if I'm sitting at the house thinking, man, I don't want to have to go. I just, I don't like it there. I don't like them people. Do you think that the word tells me that even my offering, even my prayer, that those things are abominations to him? Because he loves what? A cheerful giver. All right? So we are to look at coming to his house as a joyful occasion. Something to be celebrated. Not as a chore. Not as a job. I'll be honest with y'all. When I was in the church, I hated going to church. I hated it. The Shabbat. I'm here. And I'm happy. And I love everybody. But when I was in the church, I hated it. I didn't want to be there. And I was working in the church, but I didn't want to be there. I did it because it was what was expected of me. And so in a situation like that, I might as well have stayed at home, huh? Because the gifts and the talents that he had given me were being wasted there because there was it wasn't that they weren't using them or trying to use them. It was just that the intent behind it was not all there. Right? The word says that he knows the thoughts and the intents of our heart. So if my intent is not there, if my intent is wrong, how can I be a blessing to anybody? It all goes back to choices. All right? But when we talk about coming to his house, it shouldn't be seen as a job. It shouldn't be seen as a hassle, a hurdle, a roadblock. Shouldn't be seen as any of that. It should be seen as a joyful occasion because he gave us a holiday every week. Right? I don't get to see Brother Michael and Sister Nicola and the kids as much as I may want to during the week. I have my own schedule that I have to work, right? We got to work. We got to do things. I don't get to see mom and dad as much as I'd like to. But again, life gets in the way. But on Shabbat, guess what? On Erev Shabbat and on Shabbat, I can be here in his house, learning about him and his son, feeling his ruach, seeing my brothers and sisters and my family, even the folks that are on Zoom. I always like to ask Chris, who's in the room? Because I like to know that people are here. It tickles me when I see Brother Tommy and Sister Vicky in there, because I know that they're dealing with serious, serious health problems. Yet, it's important for them to be there. I love to see the heralds in there. Same thing, they're dealing with situations. But that's why we have Zoom open for people, isn't it? To facilitate it, to make it easier. Right? Yeah, exactly. When you're hundreds of miles away. Well, I mean, even when you're close, but your physical health won't allow you to, It's good to have everybody together. Brother Lenny, Sister Avia, Brother David. I don't know if his wife is getting an opportunity. Miss Carolyn's getting an opportunity to listen in. I hope so. We had Stephanie. Is it Stephanie? Is that her name? And her son, what is it? Jaden, had them last night. We hadn't seen them for a few weeks. It was nice to get to see them. Do you see what I'm saying? We get to have exposure to each other that we don't get during the rest of the week. All right? So we should look at coming to Yahweh's house not as a social club, because there's an awful lot of churches that do that, don't they? They got the mirror ball and the laser light show and the fog machine and all that kind of stuff. That's not what it's all about. It's not about the emotion, right? It's not about, oh man, the Spirit really, really moved. Well, what did they preach about? I don't know. But boy, did the Spirit move. What did you gain from that? Got some cardio in maybe, but other than that, I don't think you got anything out of it. And likewise, in verses 11 through 14, okay, in 11 through 14, he said that there's going to be a place where Yahweh your Elohim shall choose to cause his name to dwell there. So in order for it to be of Yahweh, he has to do what? Cause his name to dwell there. So this is why I can't go worship in a place that doesn't bear his name. Okay? I can't worship Yahweh in a Buddhist temple. Can I? Because it's not his name over the door. Okay? I can't worship Yahweh in a mosque. or in any other kind of temple. Do you see what I'm saying? You can't do that. Because his name is not there. His nature is not there. His character is not there. His power is not there. His authority is not there. So therefore, if the name does not exist, neither do those things in that place, is what I'm talking about. All right? Don't think that our brothers are going to get away from that either, because you're not going to find Yahweh's name in the synagogue. You're going to find placeholders, replacements. You're going to find, that's what you're going to find. Places where they've done what? Removed him. Okay? There's an awful lot of places out here where they need to just take down the sign and put up Ichabod over it, because his glory has left the building. Okay? But that's the thing. The name has to be attached to that place. This is Yahweh's house. And we're not shy about that either, are we? We don't replace the name with Adonai or Bashem or any of that. We don't do that. We use the name because it was given to us. It was given to his people, and we're just as much his people as our brothers are, aren't we? The word says we've been grafted in, so we're just as much his people as they are. We're recent, right? But we're still his people. We make a choice to use his name. And I don't care, but I don't think that we use it too much, which is what we heard sometime. We heard from a person, they said that they thought that we used the name too much. How can you use it too much? It's his memorial name forever. How can you use it too much? And that's what I was going to say. The word tells us that you know a tree by the fruit that it bears, right? That very same person who told us that we used it too much is so lost off in Kabbalah and everything else. To be honest with you, I don't even know if he's still alive. I have no idea. I haven't talked to him in 15 years. But he got so off into Kabbalah and all that kind of stuff, trying to please this instead of being worried about what's here. Right? Yes, ma'am.
I mean, isn't it not the ones that are not on the walk at all, the ones that are always telling you you're doing it wrong? Or they've been on the walk and walked away?
Well, yeah, because they choose to accept as gospel the precepts of men. They don't want to accept the word. They want to get what, well, when I was there, my grandpa taught me that, da-da-da-da-da. Grandpa, you got to say, Grandpa may have been wrong. All I know is that the word is right here, and it tell me whatever I need to know. Yes, ma'am.
Malachi 3:16 and 17. Then they that feared Yahweh spoke often one to another, and Yahweh hearkened and heard it, and a book of remembrance was written before him for them that feared Yahweh and that reverenced his name. And they shall be mine, and Yahweh, saith Yahweh of hosts, in that day when I gather up my special treasure, and I will spare them as a man spares his own son that serves him.
So see, said that there's going to be a special book that just contains those who spoke about his name and thought about it how often. And he said that when I gather them up, I'm going to make them into jewels. Why? Because of that name. He never called us to hide it. He never called us to replace it. He never called us to do any of that stuff. Do you think that the greatest name in all of time and eternity needs me to hide it? That's foolishness. We got to keep it. We got to use it. Okay? And there's a lot of people that disagree with that. And you know what? That's fine. That's your opinion. You're entitled to it. But we're going to have to agree to disagree. All right? It's a memorial. You don't make a memorial and then hide it. That goes against the very meaning of a memorial, right? You look at a memorial, you observe a memorial, you do these things to do what? To remember. That's why it's called a memorial. But if I take it and get rid of it, or put it under a blanket or a bushel basket, how's it going to shine its light to everybody in the house? Because there's light in that name, isn't there? So if I take that lamp, I take that light, and I put it on a candlestick, as the King James says, and then I put a basket over it, what good is it doing? None. It's creating a fire hazard. Yeah. Okay? So remember, when people tell you that name, that you can just call him G-O-D and that's good enough, it is not. Because there's a lot of G-O-Ds out here, ain't there? They're all over the place. Not only the ancient ones from history, but also the ones, what do they call a lot of entertainers? They call them what? Remember that TV show, American Idol? You see what I'm saying? There's a lot of this kind of stuff. We create our own Elohim, don't we? Our pets, our jobs, our money, our car, our kids, we create our own Elohim. And anything that we let take a spot over him is going to be the very thing that brings us down. That's going to be the very thing that we're destroyed by. All right. And then in 15 and 16, it says here, notwithstanding, you may kill and eat flesh in all your gates, whatsoever your soul desires after, according to the blessing of Yahweh your Elohim, which he has given you. The unclean and the clean may eat thereof, as of the roebuck and the hart. It's not talking about that we can eat unclean things. It's talking about the people who are partaking of it. Okay? So, for example, if a person is unclean because of a bodily function, or they just buried a person, or if they can still eat of the things that Yahweh provided for them. Okay? But it says the unclean and the clean alike. It's not talking about the thing that you're eating. Okay? And let's see here. 16 says, only you shall not eat the blood, you shall pour it upon the earth as water. So we have a further admonishment to not take part in pagan practices, because there were several of these practices where the consumption of blood was required. Because they thought, if I drink the blood of this creature, I'm going to get strong as a bull. Or there's a lot of this type of thought pattern, especially in Canaan and in these areas. Okay? It's the same thing with the whole boiling a kid in its mother's milk kind of a thing. These are enchantments. These are pagan practices, magic spells, if you will, that we are not to partake in. Because when we do that, what does it do? It takes Yahushua completely out of the equation. And we're trying to make it to Yahweh a different way. We're trying to go up some other way. Right, Rebbe? All right? But we got to get to the Father how? Through the Son. That's the only way. But when I do these other things, then that takes him completely out of the equation and says, hey, I can get there on my own. And I got news for you. You cannot. We cannot make it to him. Right? The word says, if you don't have the Son, you don't have the Father. And if you don't have the Father, you don't have the Son either. And that's what it says? So guess what? We got to have them both. We got to have both of them. But like I said, I can't make it to Yahweh without the proper sacrifice. If they came up there to get their sins atoned for, right? If they came to the tabernacle, if they came to the brazen altar and they didn't have any sacrifice, what could the priest do for them? Nothing. So if I appear before him and my sacrifice is not in place, guess what he's going to see on me? All those things that I'm trying to get out from under. All my failures, all my shortcomings, all my sins, every time I missed a mark, that's what he's going to see. That's why we talk about getting it under the blood, right? I got to get that stuff under the blood, because when I do, then that's what he sees. He sees the blood of the sacrifice and he says, okay, that's been taken care of. But if I think I'm going to get forgiven on my own merits, I am a fool. And yes, I'll use that word. But that is foolishness if I think that anything I can do can make it so that I'll be acceptable. The only thing I can do is choose his Son and choose to walk after him every day. That's the only thing I have control over. I don't have control over anybody else but me. So I got to know, what am I doing here? And I've got to be cognizant of that fact too. And guess what else? I got to be man enough to say, hey, you're screwing up. You're missing the mark, brother. You better get it back on track. But I see me way more than anybody else ever does. So I got to learn how to be honest with myself, right? I got to, like I said, I got to look into that perfect law of liberty. Because when I look in it, it's going to show off what? It says it's like a natural man beholding his face in a glass, in a mirror. Well, that's just like the laver. The laver that was outside, they had to wash their hands and their feet in it, right? But guess what else they had to do? They had to see themselves in it, so that they knew what manner of man they were. So I got to be man enough to be able to tell myself, you're missing it. You're missing it. Get it back on track. Okay? But there are plenty of places that will tell you, oh, if you just say this prayer, everything's going to be great. If you just perform this action, everything will be okay. If you say 3 Hail Marys and 5 Our Fathers, oh, you'll be great. If you just pray to this saint, you'll be all right. If you'll just wear this red string around your wrist, you'll be protected from the evil eye. If you'll put this amulet on, or if you'll attach this talisman to the doorposts of your house, do you see what I'm saying? There's so much baloney, and not just the kind that string was on, but there's so much baloney in both sides, in both houses. All right? And that's the thing. We need to learn how to distance ourselves from those practices. He never once said, if you wear this amulet, you'll be protected. You'll be safe. The only thing that we know that we can wear that's going to keep us safe is the blood of Yahushua. Sure, there's other things. We need to have our head coverings. We need to have our beards. We need to be wearing our tzitzit. We need these things. Yes, we need to do these. Okay? But I've also got to have the blood of Yahushua. Because I can be covered every day until doomsday. And if I don't have that blood applied to my life, there's no salvation for me. A lot of folks that believe that circumcision is going to get you in. And that's not going to do it. There's a lot of people that believe that knowing the word is going to get you in. That ain't going to do it either. All right? You got to have all of these things. All right? The blood of Yahushua it's the end all, the be all. You got to have that. All right? The other things are the rules of the house, and we need to know what's expected of us. Okay? But we'll never make it inside the city without the blood of his son. Yeah, that's right. Because he said what? That no stranger, right? No stranger who is not circumcised in the heart or in the flesh will be in my temple, in my tabernacle. Also says that no sin is going to enter the kingdom, right? So if we want to make it into the city, we got to be wearing the one that we proclaim. We ended up a little while ago talking about, how we are supposed to, we're supposed to separate ourselves, right, from these pagan practices. And that was what Yahweh was telling them. He's like saying, look, when you get into the land, I don't want you doing this stuff, right? He knew they were going to, but he's trying to let them so that they would be without excuse. All right. So in verses 17 and 18, it says that we're not supposed to, now he's talking about when you get in there, right? You may not eat within your gates the tithe of your corn or your wine or your oil or the firstlings of your herds or your flocks or any of the vows which you vow, nor your free will offerings or heave offerings of your hand. But you must eat them before Yahweh your Elohim in the place where Yahweh your Elohim shall choose. You and your son and your daughter and your manservant and your maidservant and the Levite which is within your gates. And you shall rejoice before Yahweh your Elohim in all that you put your hands to. So what is it telling us? So what is what it's telling us is that when we partake of the things that Yahweh has blessed us with, we are to do it with the right spirit. Okay? We can't do it with a spirit of like, well, it's about time. I've been waiting all this time. Can't do it that way. We can't do it with a spirit of, well, yeah, this is my blessings because he owes me. No. It's just like that person that I told y'all about a couple weeks ago that, said they made the comment, it was on a news in a broadcast or something, and they made the comment that, if something didn't happen, then y'all would have to apologize to all of us for. No, you don't have to do anything like that. You got to apologize to me. You know what I'm saying? But that's we get way too big for our britches sometimes, and we come off with some stuff, and some of the things that people say just does not make any sense. But when we partake of the blessings, we are to do it with an attitude of gratitude. Be thankful for everything he gives you. Be thankful for everything that he's given you. Be thankful. You know what I mean? I'm just as thankful, well, more so today than I was before. You know what I mean? Because I understand that I couldn't have done things on my own. I needed help. I tried. When I tried to do it on my own, guess what? It didn't work out. But when Yahweh's in the mix, then it does. So we've got to understand that when we partake of our blessings, we have to do it in the right spirit. By that same token, if we reap a curse from the things that we've done, we have to learn to accept that as well. Okay? It's like I said at the very beginning of the Parsha, you know, people want all the blessings, but nobody even wants to talk about the curse. People want all the blessings of the Old Testament. You'll be the head, not the tail. You'll be the lender, not the borrower. They want all these things, but they don't want to do what's right. They don't want to do what's going to put them in that position. Right? The scriptures say, I don't remember exactly how it goes, but paraphrasing, you know, that the hell of all, you know what I mean, is going to put you in a good place after you have suffered a while. Okay? A while. It does not mean forever. Okay? Does not mean that because you're struggling now that you're going to always be struggling. All right? But what it does mean is that when we are in a situation, we need to be like, thank you, Father, for trusting me enough, for loving me enough to test me. Chris, go ahead with that 1 Peter 5 and 10.
Okay, so 1 Peter 5 and 10 says, "But the Elohim of all favor, who has called us unto his eternal glory by Messiah Yahushua, after that you have suffered a while, make you perfect, establish, strengthen, and settle you."
So see, you can grow. You can be established. You can be strengthened. You can be settled. But it's going to take him to do it. But sometimes we got to go through some things, don't we? You ever wonder why they call growing pains? Because sometimes growing don't feel good. It hurts. Okay? So we've got to understand that in order to grow sometimes, you know, we got to be better than what we were. Okay? And sometimes that growth comes with a little bit of pain. Because he's got to get us from one place to another. So it's not always comfortable. And it's surely not always fun. But when we get across that finish line, then we'll reap the rewards of what we have done. This is why I keep bringing up personal responsibility to our people. Because we will reap the rewards of what we either have or have not done. Everybody's going to have to stand on their own 2 feet. Right? So I can't blame this one or that one. That Brother Michael, I asked him to help me with such and such, and he didn't do it. That's not going to be good. That's not going to make it. That's not going to, you know. What I do is what I got to pay for. All right? And then 20 through 25, he talks again about not eating blood. All right? When we say that we want to eat something, we want to eat some flesh, we want to eat some meat, all right? We can. We're allowed to do that. Okay? But we got to make sure that it's cooked. Amen? There's a lot of diseases and infirmities and things like that that are passed on through bodily fluids. So therefore, there are diseases that can cross species boundaries. There are. Thank heaven most can't, but there are some that can. All right? And if you happen to eat an animal, that's why when you see on a menu, it always says something about, the danger of eating undercooked eggs or meat or chicken, you know what I mean? Well, the restaurants do that to keep themselves out of trouble. Because there's some folks out there, my grandfather was one of the worst. Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Well, like we're saying, the Father told us that there are certain foods that we can eat and certain we cannot eat, right? Well, and what Sister Nicola was talking about, and we're going to talk about it here when we get to chapter 14. Okay? But right now, we're down here on the Gulf Coast, and everybody, all these people, especially like in Louisiana, and everybody talking about oysters. They want to eat the raw oysters and all this oysters. Well, first of all, you can take a look at that thing and know you ain't supposed to eat it. All right? You can take a look at it and say, no, I don't believe I'll do that. All right? I know they don't. But you can look at it and say, that first dude that ate that must have been starving to death because, that poor fella. But the point is, we're not supposed to eat those anyway. Okay? And what's going on with them right now? They got a big deal where they've got MRSA. They've got that flesh-eating bacteria in them. Do you want to eat that? With that flesh-eating I don't think so. You shouldn't want to eat that nasty thing anyway. Leave it to do what it's supposed to do out there, make pearls and clean the water. That's what it's supposed to do. I don't know. Yeah, that was the cesium-132 or 134 or whatever, which is radioactive. It's an isotope. It's a radioactive isotope. Well, there was just in the past couple of weeks a huge recall of frozen shrimp from Walmart, from the Great Value brand, that had cesium-132 in it, which, like I said, is a radioactive isotope. Okay, Kim said it got glowing reviews. Boy, I tell you what, don't quit your day job. That's what it is. Yeah, definitely don't quit that job. But do you see what I'm saying? There's, if we're eating, look, if you eat a piece of chicken, which is perfectly permissible for us, but if it's not cooked all the way, you run the risk of salmonella, which may not kill you, but it will make you very, very sick and you'll wish you was dead. Okay? If you have a compromised immune system, then it could. But the point is, he told us not to eat these things that way for a reason. Okay? He told us not to do that. All right? And here's the thing that we know for a fact. Do you remember when they was all whining and crying about they didn't have any meat to eat? They had all these flocks and all these herds, but somehow they didn't have any meat to eat. Do you remember that? And they whined and cried and murmured and complained, and Yahweh heard it and he got upset. It seems like the more we murmur and complain, the faster he hears it. You ever notice that? The more you put your mouth on someone else, the quicker he hears it. All right? But they went to crying about, we don't have no meat. Yahweh said, I'll give you some meat. And he created all these quail. Right? And there was a lot of them. I ain't even going to try to guesstimate how many. But it said that while the people were eating them, said that the meat was still between their teeth, and he struck them down. Well, because of their animalistic lust, their desire, they were eating them raw. Okay? So the thing is, that's not what we're supposed to do. If you're going to eat a poultry, make sure it's cooked. It's all about keeping us healthy, not getting sick. That's why we have food laws in place. That's why we have food safety and food defense. That's why we have all of these things, is to keep people safe, right? To keep them healthy. All right? If you go eating all this stuff out of the Gulf, have y'all seen how nasty the Gulf is? Have you seen how dirty it is? It's got all that, it's got medical waste and all kinds of stuff in it. And people are eating seafood out of the Gulf that has been doing what? Eating all that same stuff, because that's its job. Its job is to clean the earth. That stuff was never created for food. Okay? So that parenthetical statement where it's talking about where Yahushua said that it's not what goes in a man, but what comes out of him that makes him unclean. And then they added a parenthetical statement. Thus he declared all foods clean. He never did that. It's in parentheses because somebody added that. Okay? That was added after the fact. That was not in the scriptures. So he never made that clean. Okay? Book of Acts, right? Book of Acts. People always want to run to Acts chapter 10. But Acts chapter 10 is never about food. It's about people. Why else would Kepha had said 2 times that I perceive that Yahweh is no respecter of persons? He didn't go to Cornelius and say, Cornelius, I just received a vision. I received something new, a new revelation. I sure would like to have a ham and cheese sandwich in your house. Did he say that? No, he did not. What he said was, I perceive, now I understand that Yahweh is no respecter of persons. And the scriptures don't say that they went in there and had bacon and eggs. It says that he went in there and that he preached the gospel, and all of Cornelius' family was saved. Had nothing to do with food. Okay? Had nothing to do with that. All right? But you see, getting carried away was something that Israel and us as Israel, it's something that we have a problem with. Okay? It's something that we have a problem with. And the choice to eat those birds raw did what? Killed them. But when it all comes down to it, who was in charge of their fate? They were. They were the ones who ate them. I'm sure if they had cooked them, they would have been fine. Right? But the name of that place, remember after they all died, they gave that place a name. Do you know what the name of that place is? Translated into English, you know what it is? The graves of the lusting. So that's where they buried all those people that fell to their animal selves. So that's the thing. We got to be careful. Even with, like I said, even with the food laws that are in place today, and we still got to be careful. Now Judaism's going to tell you about big K and little K kosher. And they'll tell you, oh, you can eat bacon all you want to, because back in those days, they didn't have the ability to store it and cook it and da-da-da-da-da. So now you can do whatever you want to because we have the technology. No, the word says don't do it. So guess what? Don't do it. It doesn't make any difference whether they had deep freezes or not back in Moses' day. He said don't do it, so you don't do it. Simple as that. Yes, ma'am.
I'm of the opinion that fire is still fire, whether it was back then or now.
That's true.
And that's how you use fire to cook.
Yeah, it hasn't changed anything. All right, fire is still fire. It ain't changed. Right? So again, we don't do that because we're told not to. And we'll see that again, like I said, in chapter 14. All right. And 26 through 28, Chris, read those, please.
Deuteronomy 12, 26 through 28 says, Only thy holy things which thou hast, and thy vows thou shalt take, and go unto the place which Yahweh shall choose. And thou shalt offer thy burnt offerings, the flesh and the blood, upon the altar of Yahweh thy Elohim. And the blood of thy sacrifices shall be poured out upon the altar of Yahweh thy Elohim, and thou shalt eat the flesh. Observe and hear all these words which I command thee, that it may go well with thee and with thy children after thee forever, when thou doest that which is good and right in the sight of Yahweh thy Elohim.
So what is he telling them to do here? He's saying when you have your meat or your whatever you want, what are they supposed to do with it? Take it to the house of Yahweh, right? They're supposed to take it there, okay? Pour out the blood, all right? And they're supposed to bless the house with it. It kind of reminds me of how we do with first fruits, right? We get our first fruits. What do we do with them? We bring them to the shul so that other people can have them. We've got fig trees at our house. So whenever the first figs come in, what do? We bring them to the shul. Mom and Dad does the same thing with the peaches and plums and, all that kind of stuff. We do that because it's a way to bless others who don't have those things. All right? And did you know that those first fruits that you bring, as you are blessing the folks at the shul with them, that also blesses Yahweh as well. Because they give the Father thanks for those things, right? So what you give blesses Yahweh. What did Yahushua say? He said, if anyone, right, gives so much as a cup of water to one of these, it's as if you've done it how? Unto me. Right? If anyone receive one of these little ones in mine, it's as if you've done it unto me. So by blessing our fellows, our brothers and sisters, by blessing each other, we bless the Father as well. And Dad, I thought about it a lot. And I know we joked about it last week. We laughed about the jet planes and all that kind of stuff. But I used to tell a person, if they wanted to give me a blessing, you know what I mean? No, you keep it. You need it more. But now I'm of an opinion to where if they want to give me something, I'll take it. As long as the scriptures say I can have it, I'll take it. So like I said, if they want to bring me a helicopter or a jet plane or whatever, that's fine. I don't know where I'll park it, but I'll take it. I don't have enough room for any of that stuff to land. I have to park it in the street, I guess. It's all, like I said, we joke about that because that's some silly stuff that you see out there, in the televangelist world. But the thing is, the things of Yahweh belong to Yahweh. He just lets us borrow them for a little while, right? So he gives us the ability to grow food and to gain wealth and all. He gives us the ability to do that. So then we take that and we do what? We bless each other with it. And by blessing each other, we also bless him. Because he gave it to us. Do you see what I'm trying to tell you? When we bless each other, we also bless him. All right? And honestly, what we have here, it doesn't belong to us anyway. Does it? The things that we have here, they don't belong to us. We're here for just a little while. But this whole planet, everything belongs to him anyway. All right, verses 29 through 32, it says, when Yahweh your Elohim cuts off the nations from before you, the ones that you're going to go dispossess, what's the big admonition here? He said, do not even ask how they do their thing, how they celebrate their feast days, how they worship their Elohim. Don't even ask, because it's not for you. All right? That's what he told him. He said, don't even ask. He said, because if you go to asking, guess what it's going to end up doing? It's going to end up snaring you. And you're going to get caught up. Let's take a look at the wisest man in the scriptures. The word talks about Solomon, said that he was the wisest and that there'd never ever be another one that was as wise as him. But boy, when he went to go getting all them wives and concubines, and he started building shrines and altars for each one of them, didn't he? For their Elohim. And what ended up happening to him? He ended up getting caught up in it, didn't he? You see, it don't take much. A little dibbling and dabbling, right? Just a little bit is more than enough. What they say, a little dab will do you, huh? It'll get you. So that's what he tells them. He says, don't even ask. Because if you do, then you're going to want to know more. And this is not for you. Okay? But he does tell them in verse 32, whatsoever thing I command you, right? Observe to do it. And then he says what? You shall not add to, you shall not take away. That's like that parenthetical statement. Thus he declared all things clean. Not what the scripture says at all. But that is a parenthetical statement that was added to. So, what do you think has been added to people because of that statement that was added to? Diseases and conditions and things that were not even written in the book. Which is exactly what he said, wasn't it? If any man adds to the words of this book of this prophecy, I will add unto him what? All the diseases that aren't even written in this book. So again, we're not even to inquire, not even to ask. Okay? The way of Yahweh is what is for us. Not this other Elohim, not that other Elohim, none of that stuff. It's not for you. Okay? Chapter 13, this is one that we've spoken about many, many times. It talks about if there arises among you a prophet, or a dreamer of dreams. And he speaks to you, right? He speaks to you and he gives you a sign or a wonder. And that sign or that wonder come to pass. Where he says, let us go do what? Worship other Elohim, whom you did not know. The word tells us, don't follow after that person. Why? Because Yahweh is allowing that to happen to do what? To test you. See, this is what we talked about earlier, isn't it? He puts it there. It's like you always heard say, you give a person just enough rope to hang themselves with. Okay? He's giving you the rope to see what you're going to do with it. So if you get to chasing after this person and you go to doing what they say, Yahweh's testing you to see where you are. All right? And it tells us that we are to love Yahweh our Elohim with all of our heart. If I love Yahweh with all my heart, that means that there's no room in there for another. I love my wife, I love my son, I love my family. Right? But the word says that I need to love him a little more. There's only room in this heart for one Elohim. And that's Yahweh. That's it. Right? The word tells us that no man can serve two masters. Because he's going to do what? He's going to love one and hate the other. Okay? So the thing is, I can't have two Elohim in my heart jockeying for position. Because naturally I'm going to hook on to one and despise the other, right? So that's the thing. I need to love him. I need to serve him. I need to cleave to him. I know that's a funny sounding old King Jamesian word, but that means I need to hold to him just as tight as I can. Okay? Like you know how you do with a tree and you splice a branch into it? It's called a scion, right? But you splice, and then that branch does what? It's grafted in and it becomes part of that tree, right? And then what does it do? It begins to give off fruit. Long as it's of the same species. Okay? I don't think I can take an apple tree and splice it into a pomegranate tree and get apples on. That's the kind of stuff that's not for us, okay? But verses 6 through 8 tell us that it doesn't matter even how close that person is to you. Could be your brother, your sister, your mother, your father, your children, whatever. There's nothing supposed to be to come between us and Yahweh. Okay? 6 through 8 tells us, it says, and that prophet or that dreamer of dreams, what's going to happen to him? They're going to be put to death. Now, we don't go out and stone people these days. We don't do that. But I guarantee you, the word has told us on several occasions that if you cause a person to fall, or if they've got a payday coming, and Yahweh will repay that. Okay? But you know that the word also tells us that it's in the book of Revelation where it talks about that, them coming out here and talking right? And coming with such stories about the beast and the false prophet and all that, you know, they could possibly turn the very elect if it were possible. Okay? But the reason for that is if you're in the elect, you're going to know what's right and what's wrong. Okay? If we see this happening and we're as close to him as we should be, we're going to see that it is not of the scriptures. And then we say, what? Sign me up? No. Say Matthew 24:24.
And Matthew 24:24 says, "For there shall arise false messiahs and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch that, if it were possible, they should deceive the very elect."
If it were possible. And the reason why it's not possible is because they know the word. And the Ruach is in them, right? They have some of those, they have that spirit like what it talks about in the book of Isaiah. The spirit of wisdom and understanding, right? The spirit of fear of Yahweh. These are the things, this is the spirit we need. All right? But it also tells us, like, no matter how close they are to you, do not let them pull you away. We love our family and we love our friends. Amen? But if something's not right, then it's not right. And I've got to be able to say, no, we ain't going to roll like that. And be man enough to stand up for what's right. Okay? So it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if it's your wife, if it's your mama, it's your daddy, whatever. If they're telling you to go against what the word says, then that person's going to be the least in the kingdom. If they make it. Ain't that what he said? Yeshua said, if anyone, right, teaches you to break the least of the commandments, they will be the least in the kingdom. And the penalty for that is death. It's being cut off, right? Like I said, it was at the hands of the people. But it had to be at the hands of the people. Why? Because it had to be 2 or 3 witnesses. The word says that nobody can be put to death at the hand of one witness. All right? So there is a penalty attached to all of the things that we do. There's a benefit or a penalty, right? A blessing or a curse. This goes right back to what we were talking about at the beginning. He sets before us a choice to make. All right? And verses 12 through 18 tells us that if there's some stuff like that going on in the city, that you're to get away from that city. Don't be there. For example, let's take the one that we all think about. Let's take Sodom and Gomorrah, for example. Okay? When did the messengers bring the fire and the brimstone? After Lot had left. So what's the picture here? Get away from it. Get away from that situation. Okay? I got no reason to go live in Las Vegas. Do I? No, there ain't nothing there for me. For heaven's sake, they call the place Sin City. Why do I need to be there? I don't. We know people. We all know people. Right? And your best friend comes to you and says, hey, I met this person and they are a palm reader. Let's go talk to them. Let's go see. What do you need to do? Get away from that situation and get away from that person. Because that's what's going. They're trying to bring you to get away from that. Do not entertain that. Hey, I met this nice person, and they make love potions. I don't know. I'm just trying to we need to distance ourselves from that. Because that sort of stuff is not for us. We need to abstain. The scriptures tell us to shun the very appearance of evil. Right? So I don't need to be going to the bar or going to, I'm just, I don't need to be going to the palm readers because my friend wants to go. I need to be trying to talk some sense into them. You don't need to go there. But if they're insistent on it, I suggest you distance yourself from that person as well. Because that kind of stuff, that's just the tip of the iceberg. Okay? So abstain from that stuff. If you know that it's being practiced, stay away from there. If that person calls you and asks you why you're distancing yourself, let them know. Okay? Got to tell them the truth. Because you're doing things that are against what the word says, and I'm not going to be any part of that. I love you, but I'm not going to be any part of it. Chapter 14, it talks about a few things. Verses 1 and 2 tell us that we are not to disfigure ourselves or cut ourselves or shave off our hair for the dead. The word tells us that Yahweh is an El of the living. Yes, we mourn for those that we've lost. And we grieve for those that we lost. But no amount of bloodshed on your part is going to honor them. No amount of any self-inflicted harm is going to do them any good. Or honestly show them how much you miss them. Okay? These are not things we are to do. Again, these are pagan practices. Okay? We need to distance ourselves from those things. I can't put it any plainer. Because when you shed blood unnecessarily, when you do it needlessly, right? What are you doing? You're offering sacrifices to demons, is what you're doing. That's what the word says. Okay? That's not what we're to do. All right? Yahushua shed his blood so that we don't have to. We don't have to bring those sacrifices anymore. Because they couldn't do anything to make us clean anyway, could they? They just kind of pushed back what we deserved. But when he came, that blood covered everything. So there's no reason for me to go out here. It's like when people say, oh, we're going to have Passover. We're going to kill the lamb and do all this stuff. No, we're not doing that. I can't do it like they did it back in them days. You know what I'm saying? I don't have to. Which is good because I'm far too empathetic. It hurts me. to have to kill an animal. It does. Even if they need it. They're sick or whatever. That's tough for me too. I'm far too empathetic. I'm not really very able to do that kind of thing. Okay? But we are not to harm ourselves for the dead. Plain and simple. People that we already know that we're not supposed to have tattoos. We're not supposed to do that. Okay? Some of us do have them. It was at a time before we knew that we weren't supposed to do it. Right? But a lot of people get them for what? For a memorial to a parent or a brother or a sister. They're doing that for the dead. So I don't care what your intent is. The word is very plain. Do not shed blood for the dead. It does nothing for them. Okay? And that sacrifice that you're making is misplaced. So, like I said, we're not supposed to print tattoo marks on ourselves anyway. But then when we go to doing it to honor a loved one that's passed away or something, now we've messed up twice. Do you see? So these are things we're not supposed to do. Verses 3 through 21 tell us what is permissible for us to eat and what is not permissible. Now, this is the second time that it's been mentioned in the Word about what is edible and what is not edible, right? First time is in the book of Leviticus, right? Second time is in the book of Deuteronomy, and it tells you, don't eat. You can eat this, but don't eat that. You can eat this, but don't eat that. Why? Because there are certain things on this planet that we were never meant to consume. They were not created as food. They were created with the job of cleaning the earth. Right? Certain birds, certain fish, certain ungulates and land mammals. And these are things that pigs will eat anything. They'll eat you. And whatever else is out there. We're not supposed to eat them. And people say, oh, well, Paul said, that if it's received with thanksgiving and you pray. Let me ask you a question. Paul said he was a Pharisee of the Pharisees. Very learned in the word. Do you think for 1 second he would tell you that it's okay to do anything that is against the scriptures? But Yaakov, I tell you no. He's not going to tell you that. Okay? But then they add in this parenthetical statement, right? Thus he declared all foods clean. That's why it had to be in parentheses, because it does not line up anywhere else in the scriptures. What Shaul is talking about is that clean foods, right? The word is broma, the food, right, that is received, as long as it is food, right, that it's to be received with thanksgiving. That does not mean an unclean creature. It does not mean an unclean animal. That was never seen as food. So therefore, shouldn't be in your mind to eat it. Okay? But he talks about what is permissible and what is not permissible in the body. Where else did he talk about that? These animals were not only for eating, but they were also for what? Clean animals. They're also for what? They were used for sacrifices. Remember what he said last night? You say that wherein have we made the table of Yahweh contemptible? In that you sacrifice the lame and the sick and the blind, right? Offer those things to your governor and see if he be pleased with you. Will he accept your person? So the thing is, Yahushua chased him out of the temple, didn't he? 2 different times. Whooped him. He said, you've made my father's house a den of thieves. First of all, they were buying and selling on the Sabbath day. When did that become okay to do? It didn't, and it still hasn't. Okay? But let me ask you a question. If the blind and the sick and the lame and all of these things were unfit for the earthly tabernacle or the earthly temple, if these things were unfit for it, what would make them be fit for this tabernacle? What did Joel say? He said that, do you not know that you are what? The temple of the Ruach HaKodesh. So if it was no good for that temple, it's no good for this temple either. You see how we use the pattern? Isn't that right, Dad? That's how we use the pattern, right? If it's no good for that temple, it's no good for this one. What did Antiochus Epiphanes do? He took the what do you call it? The abomination of desolation, sacrificed it in the temple, right there on the altar, to do what? To desecrate it. So if a pig desecrated the temple, what do you think it does to this temple as well? Does that make sense, Brother Michael? Is that hard to understand? I don't think so. If it's no good for the tabernacle, how can it be good for this temple? Ma'am? Well, it is hard for some to understand, but that's because they have not been taught, yes, and they are slaves to their lusts, to the flesh.
Some have been taught, but they still choose not to listen.
Again, though, they choose not to do it. This is what I'm talking about. See how they choose not to. The Jewish guy that I grew up with, that dude ate every piece of pig he could find at my house. We ate pork 3 times a day at my house back when I was a kid. And let me tell you what, he ate more of it than I did. We went to a restaurant one time. I kid you not. We went to a restaurant one time. Me and him and his mom. We were in Los Angeles. We went to a Chinese restaurant. Okay? And I had something. I don't remember what it was. But he ordered a plate that had all kinds of seafood on it. Lobsters and shrimps and scallops and all. And he ate every bit of it. And I told him, I said, man, you can't eat that. He said, I do what I want to. Okay. Jewish guy. He said, I do what I want. Okay. That's exactly right. Let's not bring up the luau. Same set of folks. But do you see what I'm saying? All right. If it was no good or unfit for the earthly tabernacle or the earthly temple, it's certainly no good for this one here. Not food, is it, Dad? No. It has a job to clean the earth. And the thing is, people went, oh, well, Moses started. No, he did not. Because what was Cain and Abel doing? They had to sacrifice, right? Let's go a little further. What about Noah? When they landed, he had to he had to take what? A pair of all the clean animals. A pair of all the unclean animals, right? And 7 pairs of the clean animals. So let me tell you what, that shows right there that the concept of clean and unclean was before Noah. They knew about it all the way back with Adam, with Adam and Eve. Of course they did, because Abel knew what to sacrifice. So you can't tell me that it was just started with Moses. Do you see what I'm saying? People say all kinds of things, but there's no logic behind it. The logic here is, if it was no good for this building, it's no good for this one either. Simple as that. And that's the word. That's the Bible. That's not just me talking. Because I do love some bacon and stuff. I do. But that's why I got to make it out of other stuff. Go get me some corned beef brisket. It works out good doing it the way I do it. And it tastes just like it. So I don't even miss it. So, like I said, 3 through 21 tells us what is good for us and what is not good for us, okay? Take a look at every one of those birds that it says not to eat is what? It's a carrion bird. It's a bird of prey. It's a scavenger. Okay? You ever smelt a buzzard? You don't want to. Much less even think about trying to eat one. It's like a Komodo dragon, right? Komodo dragon, their mouth is so full of germs and disease. They're not poisonous as in like they have venom, but the infection from a bite can kill you just because of how heavy the infection load is. That is their job. It's not for us to eat that kind of thing. All right, and then 22 through 27, this talks about tithes and firstlings. Okay? So, where are we supposed to bring the tithes? Into the storehouse. Now, what it says in Micah? Is it Micah, Dad? Where it talks about bringing the tithes into the storehouse? Is that in Micah? Is it Malachi? I always get Malachi and Micah mixed up.
All right. Malachi 3 and 10 says, Bring ye all the tithes into the storehouse, that there may be meat in mine house, to prove me now herewith, saith Yahweh of hosts, if I will not open you the windows of heaven and pour you out a blessing, that there shall not be room enough to receive it.
So what do the tithes do? They support the house. They support the work. Right? They keep the lights on. Keep the air conditioner running. Keep the water running. I'm going to tell y'all kids, keeps the bathroom working. Because y'all in there 452 times a day. But what I'm saying is, this is how the work is done. It's on the backs of the people. The house cannot support itself. Okay? It's up to us to do it. All right? And it talks about firstlings. What are firstlings? That's what we call the Bachor, right? The eldest. All right? And all of the firstlings belong to who? They belong to Yahweh. Okay? That's why the eldest got the double portion. They were the beginning of their father's strength. But firstlings, right, the Bachor, the eldest, they have a special place with Yah. All right? Well, all of us are the firstborn of something. Amen? Yahushua was the firstborn of the dead. All right? So that's the thing. We're all firstlings. And we all belong to Yahweh. All right. 28 and 29. This simply talks about taking care of the poor. Because Levi doesn't have what? They don't have an inheritance. But their job is to do what? To run the tabernacle. To perform the service. Amen? So, as part of them performing their service, they are provided for. And the word tells us that we need to take care of the widow and the fatherless, the stranger, and who? The Levite. Basically, he's talking about those who don't have it as well as some others. All right? This is what I'm telling us. If you're struggling and somebody wants to give you something, let them bless you. Because that is what we're supposed to do. Okay? We are to take care of the poor. And those who don't have as much as, because I promise you, there's some out there that don't have a roof over their heads. And the last I checked, we all had pretty decent places to live. It may not be exactly what we want, but bless Yahweh, we've got somewhere to be out of the weather. Right? It may not be ideal, but we have somewhere to be. So bless Yahweh for that. Because we could be living under a bridge somewhere. Or off on a lean-to in the forest or something. Do you see what I'm saying? And we need to be thankful for the things that we have. This is what we talk about, that attitude of gratitude. I may not have as much as Brother Michael does, or Brother Lenny, or whoever. I may not have as much as the Heralds. But what I have is mine, and I'm thankful for it. Y'all don't know how many times I think about our little place is nothing special, but it belongs to us. It's paid for. It's mine. Right? And I tell you what, I sleep awfully good in that little house. Small as it is, I sleep awfully good in there. And I stay pretty dry. We've eaten plenty of meals in there. And we've eaten everything from fancy stuff to top ramen. But my point is, we need to receive that with thanks as well. Be thankful for what we have. Okay? And even though we may not have a much, we always try to look after each other. Now what you want?
I was talking to teachers the other day, including granddaughter, niece, whatever she is as well, telling her how we live in a camper. And they're like, with 9 kids? I was like, no, we only got 5 here in Mississippi, but still, we had to learn to be okay with being there. Mm-hmm. And it's crazy, like, when you get to the point of being thankful for what even the smallest amount that you have, how much smoother life tends to run.
It really does. It really does. Because there's so many out there that have everything, but they're still never happy. They're still not happy. They're miserable. Got everything in the world they could possibly want, but it's never enough.
But it also became a witness to them as well, because you could see that they were really intrigued by the whole process of all of it as well.
Yeah. And see, that's what I'm talking about. We say more just by living our lives than we do if we got up on a soapbox and preached all day long. People see how we react, how we act. The little bit that we got, hey, we're thankful for it. Right? And how many times, whenever anybody comes across a thing, we're all talking about, bless Yahweh, bless Yahweh. That's part of building each other up. And teaching each other, hey, we can be happy with what we have. I'll tell you what, look, okay, case in point. Y'all know I had to take my little car, my little Corolla, little old nothing Matchbox car. And for the past 3 weeks, I've been in a 2024 or 2025 Nissan Versa with the big, we call that the big touch screen and all that, and all this backup cameras and all this really high tech, nice vehicle. Been in it for 3 weeks because of them getting my windshield fixed. It was good to get back and forth in, but after about 3 days, I was like, man, I want my little car back. That's my car. I want my little car back. My ugly look, I want it back. And boy, Kim will tell you, I got so excited when they called me and told me that my car was ready. I left within 15 minutes of getting that phone call to go get my little car back. Because that's mine. You know what I'm saying? But I'm thankful for it. Because there's a lot of people out there that don't even have that. So, like I said, we need to learn how to accept things and how to give things without expecting anything else in return. That's like in chapter 15, verses 1 through 11. It talks about the 7th year release. Now we know that every year or every 7 years, the land gets what? The land gets a Sabbath too, doesn't it? Okay. Well, just like the land, every 7th year was meant to be a Shabbat. People went back to where they came from. If they were a servant, right? If they were under a contract, they went back to where they were from. Now, in the Yovel, in the 50th year, they got back any property that was sold, things like that. But when it came to the people, every 7 years, they got to go back to their tribes, where they were from, their towns. They got to do that. Okay? So verses 1 through 11 talk about that 7-year release. And it tells us that we're not to look at our brother as in, I see 7-year release is only 2 years away. Yeah, and he's going to try to get over on me. It says not to have an evil thought in your heart. Because that's all part of what? What do we call that? That's the evil eye. Okay? Not somebody putting a voodoo hex whammy curse on you. That's not what that is. All right? Shaking their stick and ooga booga at you. That ain't what that is. All right? What it is having a hard heart towards your brother or your sister who is in need. Because all of us have come from somewhere. I don't know of anybody in this house or out in the Zoom room. I don't know anybody that was born independently wealthy. Mom, were we born independently wealthy? That wealth was independent from us. It went whatever way it was going to go. But none of us were born independently wealthy. And as long as this world is spinning, and as long as we're here, as long as there are people on the earth, there's always going to be the poor. Okay? And especially if it's our brothers and sisters. If they need help, we need to be helping. 12 through 18, it goes on to talk about Hebrew servants. Now, these are different. Hebrew servants are different from regular servants, aren't they? They're to be taken very good care of. Because guess what? They may be a servant, but really they're all a relative. We're all kinfolk, right? Regardless of where you come from, what your skin color is, any of that, regardless of all that, we're all kinfolk. All right? I don't think that there's one person on this earth that can say, I'm 100% XYZ. There's way too many people here. There's been too much mingling over the years. I don't think that there's anybody that can say, oh, I'm 100% Finnish, or I'm 100% Portuguese, or whatever. I don't know. But what I'm saying is I don't think that that's a case. Definitely not in this room. Okay? But we are to take care of each other. Now, there was a special thing that they could do. At the end of that time, right, they could make a choice. There's that word again. They could make a decision. They could say, I love my family. If the master gave them a wife and they had children, if he came in by himself, how did he go out? He went out the same way he went in. But if he was to say, I love my wife and I love my children, I love my master, I don't want to leave, then they would do what? They'd pierce his ear through with a awl, right, on the doorpost. Why? So that his blood would become part of the house. And it's the same thing. All of us, we have to make a decision. And we have to say, I love my family. And I love my master. And I don't ever want to be away from, I don't ever want to be, separated from him. Right? Because the word says that he'll give us a what? A nail in his temple. And that at one point we're going to become pillars in the temple, aren't we? You know what that means? We'll become part of the house. So therefore we got to know. It's just like the example of them piercing the ear, right? Because the blood, his blood becomes part of that house. Just like one day we will become part of his house. So guess what? If you're going to be part of the house, you better know the house rules. Amen? You better know what's acceptable and what is not if you're going to be part of the house. Because how would you like your part of the house to get remodeled? Because you wasn't holding up your corner. I don't think I'd want that. So I need to be familiar with what's required of me. Right? So again, if we are going to be part of the house, we have got to know the house rules. Simple as that. That's pretty easy to grab, isn't it? Pretty easy to digest there. Okay? And then 19 through 23, again, it talks about the older, the Bachor, the firstborn. Okay? Chris, read 19 through 23, please.
All right. Deuteronomy 15:19 through 23. All the firstling males that come of thy herd and of thy flock thou shalt sanctify unto Yahweh the Elohim. Thou shalt do no work with the firstling of thy bullock, nor shear the firstling of thy sheep. Thou shalt eat it before Yahweh the Elohim year by year in the place which Yahweh shall choose, thou and thy household. If there be any blemish therein, as if it be lame or blind or have any ill blemish, thou shalt not sacrifice it unto Yahweh thy Elohim. Thou shalt eat it within thy gates. The unclean and the clean person shall eat it alike, as the roebuck and as the hart. Only thou shalt not eat the blood thereof. Thou shalt pour it on the ground as water.
Okay, so this is just what he said just a little while ago, isn't it? He said, don't eat the blood, pour it out on the ground, right? But what did he tell them? Again, this furthers my argument from earlier. He said, if it has a blemish, see, you're not even, with that firstling, you're not even supposed to, it's not even supposed to be worked. You're not supposed to put a yoke on it. You're not supposed to have it draw water. You're not supposed to do nothing with it. You're not supposed to do any work with it. Because that is sanctified to Yahweh, right? What is sanctification? Setting aside, right? Making it holy. So he says that we are to take these things and sanctify them to Yahweh because they're going to be a sacrifice to him. But those offerings that were made with the firstborn, who got to benefit from that? Who benefited from that blessing? Everybody. Everybody. You see? That's why they're called the chosen. They're chosen from the womb. And they're there for the benefit of everybody. The firstborn of the flock, those did not belong to you. You raised them, and then they were fit. They were then sacrificed, right? But it benefited everybody. And this is a case where you take a hit for somebody else. You're providing for that person who does not have it. But it was there for everybody. Okay? Chapter 16 talks about 3 very special days. Talks about, in verses 1 through 15, it talks about Pesach and unleavened bread together as one. Because Pesach is not a week long. Pesach is just a space of a few hours. And then unleavened bread picks up the rest of those days. Most people will call it Passover just as a way to lump them all together. But we do realize that Passover is one day, and then you have unleavened bread, which is another week. Passover is just a few hours. But unleavened bread, the Feast of Weeks, or what it calls Shavuot, right? And then Sukkot, the Feast of Tabernacles. It tells us about them, tells us when they are, and even tells us how to celebrate them. So my question is, if they were not important for us, why would he be so specific about as when to do them, how to do them, and what they're about? Yeah, exactly. And who was going to show up? Because at the end of this thing, somebody's showing up. And it ain't going to be Elijah. Okay? But he tells us how to reckon them, how to celebrate them, what to do, when they are. You know, every year we go through this whole counting backwards from this one and doing this and going and looking for the new moon and all this kind of stuff. But we do that because it's important. The calendar is Yahweh's time clock. The spring festivals, the spring feast days are already done. Yahushua already fulfilled those. But we're heading into what? Right now, we're heading into the fall feast. And there's still some that Yahushua is yet to fulfill. All right? But like I said, it mentions these three specifically. Tells us when they are, how to celebrate them, what we are to do. Okay? And then in verses 16 and 17, it talks about what we call the Shlosh Regalim, all right, the 3 ascension feasts. So these are the 3 holidays that all men, right, that all men were supposed to go up. That we were supposed to go up and celebrate these days. All right? Not empty-handed. All right? We need to bring a gift. We need to bring a sacrifice. We need to bring an offering. Okay? But he told us that if we would not come up, if the families of Egypt would not come up, what's going to happen? There'd be no rain. And if that don't get them up, then what? It'll get even worse. So when it talks about the families of Egypt, think about this. We talk about Egypt being an image or a shadow of the world. So that's what he's telling them. If the families of the world, if you won't come up, then you're not going to have any rain. And how are you going to feed your family with no rain? Amen? How are you going to do that? So he's letting us know. But the word also says that there's going to be a famine in the land, not for food or drink, not for meat or drink, but for the word of Yahweh. Yeah.
Okay, that scripture that talks about if you don't come up, you won't have any rain. That's Zechariah 14 and 17 and 18.
Go ahead, Chris.
All right. So Zechariah 14, 16, 17. And it shall come to pass that every one that is left of all the nations which came against Jerusalem shall even go up from year to year to worship the King, Yahweh of hosts, and to keep the feast of tabernacles. And it shall be that whoso will not come up of all the families of the earth unto Jerusalem to worship the King, Yahweh of hosts, even upon them shall be no rain.
No rain. Okay. Yeah, go ahead and read 18.
And if the family of Egypt go not up and come not, that have no rain, there shall be the plague, wherewith Yahweh will smite the heathen that come not up to keep the feast of tabernacles.
So see, that's what I'm trying to tell us. No rain is bad enough. But then he said, if you still won't come up, guess what? There's a plague coming. And that ain't going to be good. We see in the scriptures where he brought plague before. And he did that to what? Get their attention. That's one of his tools, okay? So the word tells us that there's nothing new under the sun. So if he did it then, he can do it again today. So let's make sure that we're observing his feast days. Let's make sure that we're looking out for each other. Let's make sure that we know the house rules. Okay? And let's make sure, again, he calls these what? Commandments. He never asked us to do anything. but he commanded us to do so. That's what people don't, he asked us to. No, he did not. I have never once seen him say, if it's not too much trouble, or if you don't mind, would you kindly? I never seen him do that. He's always said, this is what you'll do. And if we want to be in that number, we better be doing what he says that we're to do, right? Plain and simple. Yes, sir.
I want you to make that statement again. If it wasn't good for Moses' temple, it's not good for...
That's exactly right.
You need to make that statement again.
No, what I said is, like I said, we were talking about unclean animals. And if the unclean animal was no good for a sacrifice in Moses' temple or in the tabernacle or in David's temple, if it was no good for that, what makes us think that it's going to be good for this temple that's supposed to be the temple of the Ruach HaKodesh, the temple of the Holy Spirit? If it pollutes that altar, it certainly pollutes this one. So like I said, let's make sure that we're not doing that. Because you don't want to be held responsible for polluting Yahweh's altar, do you? I wouldn't want to have to face him on that. I can do without some scrimps and I can do without that stuff. Yeah. But anyway, we love you. Appreciate you. That's going to do it for my Parsha today. I want to thank everybody for being here with us. My family here in the house, and of course our family out there in the virtual shul, out in the Zoom room. Y'all thought I was going to say Pal Talk Land, but I didn't. But I just did. But anyway, no, we love you. Appreciate you. We thank you so much for being with us.